There are moments that connect us. When we feel connected, we want to make change. We fight for what we love. To me, my camera has been a tool to connect, a tool to understand, a tool to feel and experience nature and the sheer power of it. To celebrate the beauty of life. Hi, I'm Kristi Odom. I'm a wildlife photographer and filmmaker based in Longmont, Colorado. I'm a Nikon Ambassador. I'm an associate fellow of the International League of Conservation Photographers. The camera is not only my weapon for change, but the bridge that creates my passion. My understanding, my connection, my love, and ultimately, my fight.
The first time I felt the emotions of an animal, it was at my very home with Choco Taco Pants. We've been through a lot in the 14 years we've been together. She was there at the hardest of times, and she has this way of knowing when I'm sad. She comes up, puts her head in my lap, and doesn't ask a thing. And it's just like, hey, I'm here. My goal with photography is to connect people emotionally to wildlife. I want to show that animals have emotions, characters, personalities. In connection, I believe, comes the fight for protection. I'm going to talk today about the crazy stories behind the images, along with my challenges and failures. But first, I'm going to talk about the passion that drives me and where that fire was first lit. And I'm going to start with one of my biggest inspirations. In July 1960, Jane Goodall traveled to Africa to study chimpanzees. What she learned there redefined the relationship between humans and animals. Her work showed just how connected everything is: people, planet, animals, environment. My first connection to wildlife happened around 12 years ago when I visited this animal sanctuary called La Senda Verde in Bolivia. This little guy, this little spider monkey, this is not the spider monkey's mother, but there was this love, compassion, and feeling. I had no idea what went into animal trafficking and the trauma that animals go through. In order to get an animal into trafficking, on average, they kill 9 mother monkeys. What they do is they shoot the moms from the trees, they pull the babies out of the dying mom's arms, and that's how an animal ends up in trafficking. People traffic monkeys for all sorts of reasons, to have them as pets, bushmeat. What I saw there, I saw trauma. I saw sadness. I saw so much of the world at its worst. But I also saw the world at its best. I went down during a really crazy time in my life, and what these animals taught me was that at the other side of pain and the other side of misery, there was also love and there was hope. And I decided I wanted to use my camera to try to show these emotions. It connected me so deeply. Orangutans share about 97% of our DNA. Chimpanzees, 99%. I've traveled all over the world to photograph these primates, and I've seen power, strength, but I've also seen grace, personalities, characters, and I've seen hope in what can be such a crazy world. I've had these moments in nature where literally my jaw has dropped because I'm so overwhelmed with something that is so beautiful that there are no words. Hopefully there's pictures. I will admit that I've cried many, many times behind my camera. This world can be so big and so sublime. It can be overwhelming, but also beautiful in so many simple ways. Beautiful in the quiet moments, beautiful in the compassion that wildlife shows each other, and also in times of need. I've also seen heroes, people that fight every day for our planet, people that go out and help these animals when there's so much destruction of wildlife and destruction of habitat. I started to realize just how much change is needed. My tool is my camera, with the hopes to celebrate wildlife and to get people to want to fight for wildlife and wild spaces. And maybe it's something as simple as getting people to use less palm oil. That's what's caused the destruction of habitat here. This orangutan lost its wilderness and roamed into a farm and had to be relocated. Little things, changes in our consumption make a huge, huge difference. Do you remember the first photo you took that you loved? This is one of my very first photos I took that I loved. I actually never thought I would be a photographer. I went to school for electrical engineering. So when I got into photography, I started to love to celebrate patterns. And I wanted to photograph a whale shark because I wanted to see those spots. And what I saw when I went out to photograph the whale sharks is I saw not just spots, but I saw all these lines. And I wanted a moment where those lines brought your eyes in and met the spots. When I went out to dive with the whale sharks, I immediately thought I had to get in the water and go deep, and I'm scuba diving and trying to take all these pictures, and I'm not getting anything. The second I went to the surface and started snorkeling, I noticed that the light was diffracting around my body. Diffraction is when an obstacle causes light to bend, and this light was bending around my body, which meant I could control it. And so I realized the more and more I swam that I could put those lines where I wanted and direct people's eyes to what I wanted them to see. So I swam, swam, swam. I might have swam into a school of jellyfish while I wasn't wearing a wetsuit. On an island with no running water or medical facilities. People that I didn't speak their language. So I show up and I say, hey, I got a problem. Can you all help me? And they said, yes, we've got aid for you. And I'm like, great. What kind of aid do you have? It was the last thing that came to my mind. I show up to lunch, ready to get this aid. Literally, they said, lemonade. There's all the scars, the spots I got from photographing the whale shark, and there was a lemon with a glass of water. And I'm like, what is this gonna do? It was not the best of situations. That's literally what I was wearing, so you can see just how much skin I had exposed. Lessons learned, right? The lemonade didn't really help. And they say when life gives you lemon, make lemonade. Still didn't make me too happy. This image ended up in the Smithsonian as part of Nature's Best Awards. I've always kind of been a little shy and introverted at the core. And I remember this being my first photo that was really put on display. And it was beautiful to be able to say, look at something that I see that's beautiful, and maybe I can get somebody else to love a whale shark a little bit more. Every time I see that image, though, I sometimes want lemonade, I'll admit. And it reminds me of the spots that I got from the jellyfish. But at the same time, it was beautiful to me because photography has this way of showing us the grand, of giving us these moments of standing with the sublime or swimming. But that's the thing about photography and nature. The sublime isn't just in the grand. My camera has taught me that there's also the sublime in the tiny. This is a tadpole. And I hope you don't mind, I'm going to talk about tadpoles, but this is no ordinary tadpole. This is a very important tadpole. The more and more I take photos, the more I want to tell stories, I want to celebrate heroes, and I want to talk about issues that matter, and hopefully get somebody to care a little more about a tadpole. This tadpole is the tadpole of a Boreal toad. Let me tell you a little bit about the Boreal toads, and this is a story I've been working on for the last couple of years. The Boreal toad is Colorado's only alpine species of toad. This high-altitude amphibian lives at 7,000 to 12,000 feet in mountain lakes and ponds. It's an indicator species for healthy wetlands, and it has been known to hop over 5 miles to find healthy habitat in rugged mountain terrain. It is found in different places in the US and Canada, and they're very unique. Like our fingerprints, they have these markings on their belly that give their individual characters. While they have no vocal sac and hibernate for half of their lives, they have a massive group, hundreds of people fighting for their survival. They used to thrive in numbers to the point where they were hopping around mountain towns. Now experts estimate that there's only 800 adults living in Colorado. They're currently listed as protected in Wyoming and endangered in Colorado and New Mexico. The major threats: habitat loss, climate change, and a deadly fungus called chytrid that is wiping out amphibian populations globally. Facilities are not only helping breed and release these boreal toads, but there's tons of community science groups that go all the way to these high altitude ponds and wetlands to check for chytrid fungus. In 2008, the Utah Department of Wildlife Resources started an assurance colony to make sure these toads did not disappear. They started that in this plateau in Utah, and since then collaborators from around the world are joining forces to save this toad. Different aquariums, different zoos, different wildlife management organizations, the list goes on and on. There are 145 toads from this 15 lot from the plateau that are all at these different institutions. So I'm like, yes, this is a story I want to take pictures of. And I took pictures of the first tadpole, or not the first. I took pictures of a tadpole released in Colorado. And then I ended up taking pictures of a release of the little tiny newly metamorphosized toads in Utah. And it's really cool because the toads were released back to the plateau in Utah that the assurance colony was started in 2008, bringing the story full circle. From zoos, state agencies, and community scientists joining forces, the story speaks to the importance of collaboration, technology, and passion to protect a species. A lot of stories have a hero or two. This story has many, and I'm so passionate about it, and I'm really excited to get out and photograph these tadpoles. One of the misconceptions I had for a very long time was a misconception about zoos. There's a whole AZA accreditation for zoos that celebrates the conservation efforts. Denver Zoo alone puts in $2 million a year to conservation, all the way from Colorado to Mongolia to Peru to Vietnam. They've got all these conservation programs for protection of species. Your local zoo is a great place to find stories, and I am such a fan. In 2019, the Denver Zoo was the first to successfully use hormones to help breed boreal toads, a model that has now literally put tens of thousands of these toads back into Colorado and Utah. Now here's the interesting thing. While this story has a lot of heroes, the biggest part about this story is a tadpole. And I'm saying, how in the world do you photograph a tadpole? That's not something you can Google. I show up with my Nikon Z9 and my 105 macro, and first time to see the tadpole tanks, and I'm putting my camera in the tank, and I'm trying to take photos. And they suck, right? Tadpoles, talking about macro photography, you've got a very, very shallow depth of field. You've got an animal that's in water, submerged, super fast, super erratic. How in the world do you photograph a tadpole? One of the things I love about photography and I love about our community is that there are so many people that are out there to help. There are so many people. So I started sharing my failures. I started sharing my failures with everybody I could and going, what did I do wrong? I had to go back to the zoo, not once, not twice, not 3 times, I think 5 freaking times to figure out how to photograph a tadpole. Here is a list of the people that helped me photograph a tadpole. How beautiful is it we live in a world that all these masters of photography are coming together to get a photograph of a tadpole. People even joined me at the zoo. Other ambassadors, Joey Terrell, Dave Black, wrote me emails. Michael Dion, who's out at the Nikon table, came with me to the zoo. Paul Van Allen helped me figure out exactly how to construct a studio for the tadpoles. It was a beautiful thing, and this honestly melts my heart that so many people came together for a tadpole. I've got a little BTS video that I want to share with you, and then I'm going to break down the setup that ended up working. Here's my BTS video.
Oh my god.
Hardest thing I've ever photographed? A tadpole. But these are no ordinary tadpoles. They're very important tadpoles. There have been a lot of threats to the Boreal Toad in Colorado and all over the world because of this fungus that's coming in called pitric. And there's also all sorts of issues with water rights. People draining ponds and lakes for their own irrigation and whatnot. And Colorado's been in a little bit of a drought, 21 years, of a 7-year drought. So with loss of habitat, fungus, these toads that used to be hopping around the roads are now, they're estimating about 800 are left in the population in Colorado. So I'm here at the Denver Zoo, who have created tons of tadpoles, and they're releasing them back into different ponds and lakes throughout Utah and Colorado in order to help boost the population so that these guys don't become a threat for extinction. Important tadpoles, so important photos. And how do you photograph a tadpole?
Here's a picture of the setup, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I was using my Z9, my 50 macro. I actually got a 50 for this project so I could get really, really close. I had a little rubber hood on my macro so that if I went against the plastic, that I wouldn't see those reflections from the light hitting it. I used 2 Asterapixel bricks, very unique light that B&H is like one of the only places that sells it. It's fantastic. But it's a static light that I can change the color, I can change the intensity, I can change the temperature. I put one on the side and one on the top. Because of the speed in the macro, having a flash fire one shot off isn't what I wanted. I wanted to be able to fire a burst of images off, so I wanted static light. I figured that would work better. Paul Van Allen helped me figure out getting a tank, which I think was awesome, and having the experts at Denver Zoo that were working for the creation of tadpoles was super important to make sure that I didn't harm any living being for the sake of a photograph, which is vital. And then on top of that, like, I bought black cardboard from Michaels to block light in certain areas. It was great, and I'm so grateful for Paul, who will answer any question you have, which is fantastic, no matter if it takes him 17,000 frames on his own camera to figure out. What was it, 17,000 for that one question? He's the man. But I was super excited, and I'll tell you, like, not only were the tadpoles impressive, for so long with macro photography, the way I photographed insects and the way I photographed stories with macro is I usually put my camera on manual focus for my lens. I put my macro, I set it so I can get as close as possible to the subject. I use a feature called focus peaking, which throws a colored light on what's in focus when you're in manual focus. So I move in and out, and when the insect is in that frame, I see that light, and I fire off a burst. That's how I do my macro photography, and that's how I was planning on photographing these tadpoles. But then I got this new firmware update for my Z9, and I went in there, and I saw something that was unbelievable, to the point where I had to put the Atomos Ninja on my camera to show you guys the electronic viewfinder. Animal eye tracking worked on a tadpole. Worked on a tadpole. I'm like, I don't know what engineer did this, but props, right? I was using autofocus to get these photos. Now I'm saying I can't even really see the eyeball with my own eye, so I was really surprised, and it wasn't exact. It wasn't locking and staying on, but it kept hitting, and I shot my pictures on autofocus. I'm like, what? As impressive as that is, what was even more impressive that actually brought me to tears at the Denver Zoo was seeing what a tadpole looks like. From the chubby cheeks to the identifier spots to the cosmos that it looks like inside the eyes. I have never seen a tadpole like this. And I was overwhelmed by something that looks like a boba and a boba tea, right? I was blown away, and I remember just going, wow. And when you have those moments that you can celebrate nature, even from a very small perspective, It opened my eyes, and it showed me just how precious this tiny critter is, that hundreds of people are fighting for its survival. There were even moments where I could see the red of the heart in a tadpole. It's beautiful when the camera can connect us, show us the sublime, show us the little, show us just how magnificent nature is. Colorado wildlife is something I'm really passionate about. I've lived in Colorado since October of 2020, and since then I'm always looking for stories. And I'm going to tell you my favorite of the Colorado animals, the incredible, the mighty, the powerful Pika. I didn't know about this species until I moved out to Colorado, and I am so glad pikas are in my life because they're amazing. And to introduce you to the mighty Pika, I put a video together. I love that we can switch our camera from photo to video mode, and when that mood hits, we can get these little video clips that can connect people in a totally different way. And I hope this video connects you to the mighty little Pika. The Pika ended up becoming my second story that I got published online for National Geographic. I contacted them and I was going, oh my gosh, there's a group of over 400 individuals that hike to high elevation to count pikas. Pikas are an indicator species, and with weather changing, they're at threats for losing their livelihood. Here's what they said in National Geographic. A critter the size and shape of a furry russet potato with Mickey Mouse ears and no tail, the American pika, might not be your standard iconic species, but the charismatic rabbit relative is integral to high-altitude landscapes of the American West. The project's mission is to document and collect key information about pikas and their habitat, and we use that information to better understand how climate change could be threatening the survival of populations. So in every story, of course, there are the heroes. Like this hero, Dr. Chris Ray, who's a wildlife biologist who's been working close with pikas as a long-term project to understand climate change and its relationship between local extinctions of pika through Western North America. I followed her out to see how her and her volunteers and other researchers collected data and monitored the pikas. And as part of this story, there were all sorts of challenges where they trapped the pikas and how they tagged them to monitor them. They trapped them in these cages, so I had to find a way to make sure I got light in there. I'm constantly bringing my SB5000, constantly bringing a flash around with a remote trigger to my flash, constantly bringing little things I can use as diffusers and going for different angles and trying to find ways to make sure I bring light into area that needs light. It's a super easy way. For any of you that got a chance to see my webinar, I talk a lot more about this on my Optic West webinar. I talk a lot about using flash, and I highly recommend, if you're curious, to watch that. Here are my settings, the camera equipment that I used. I used the Z7 II, 24-70, SB5000, WR-R11 to trigger it. And this ended up being one of the photos that ran in the story, which is great because I wanted to tell the pika in all sorts of different forms. Sorry. These pikas have quickly grabbed my heart from the fact that they collect all these flowers and they put flowers and leaves and forbs in their rock piles. And they actually don't hibernate. They put them in there and they feed on them throughout the crazy, crazy mountain winter. And they're survivors. And they also get big bellies, which I love. I was lying in bed one morning and slow to get out of bed, checking my phone, seeing what was going on in the world. And then I saw this list. I saw this email. National Geographic's Best Animal Photos of 2021. I'm very new to getting my stuff and even just online for National Geographic. I'm new to like really pushing these stories and fighting for them because it is a very hard battle. And I remember seeing and going through this list and seeing Brian Scarry and Amy Vitale, and then I saw my name. Sorry. And I saw the pika. And I remember just crying in bed because I couldn't believe that I was on that list with my heroes and with so many amazing photographers, and there's my pika. And my husband looks over, wakes him up, and he's like, whoa. And I'm like, it's good, it's good. I want to talk about this shot, because while it doesn't look like anything too special, it actually did take a lot to get this photo. The thing I've noticed about wildlife is wildlife has repetitive behavior. A lot of times I notice this with insects, a dragonfly. If you go out to a flower or a reed and the dragonfly is there, and then it flies off, stay focused. Because you might not just get that dragonfly to come back, but you might get it landing. They go back and forth to the same spot over and over again. This pika was going back and forth to the same spot over and over again. It was going down and licking the rocks here. Maybe it liked a mineral or something like that. So I put my Nikon Z7 II down there, wide angle 20 millimeter lens. I made sure it wasn't in the area that the pika was interested in. It was a little bit off. And I used that WR-R11, the same trigger I used for the flash, down to trigger that camera. I sat back with a big pack of M&Ms. Chocolate, right, Lizzie? Sat back with a big pack of M&Ms, and I waited, and sure enough, pika came down, and I fired off shots. Little things, a little tiny remote that can help you get your flash off camera, a little tiny remote that can get you step back and turn your camera into a remote, helped me get this photo that ended up on that list. I'm pretty excited about that. All right, I know this has been like after lunch, and like David said, it's the long stretch. So I'm gonna let you guys all stand up and give yourselves a big stretch. You have as much time as my pika stretch video. And honestly, this is just an excuse for me to watch this video because I'm kind of obsessed. Check out the back legs. This is my favorite part right here. Oh my God, right? I love it so much you're gonna watch it again, but mirrored. Everyone feeling nice and stretched? Oh, yes, I love this audience. You're amazing. Gosh. There it is. Oh, the pika stretch gets some applause. Yes. I love Colorado, and I was out, and I'm kind of still, I think, just a couple of years into video, and I love video. I'm getting obsessed. I'm loving doing these little video clips. I was out rock climbing with my stepson and husband, and to me, one of my dreams has always been to do a camera campaign, because it's like, do something you're passionate about and show off our gear, and you're like, yes! And I remember being out rock climbing with Miles. That's Miles, my stepson on the rocks. Killing it, right? I was out rock climbing with Miles, and I get this call from Michael Corrado, head of the Nikon Ambassador Program. Kristi, this is super confidential, and that's always fun. Kind of walk away. I'm like, all right, what's up? We're coming out with a new flagship mirrorless camera, the Z9, and we want you to do a slow motion video campaign. Of course, I started crying because I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm just crying, and he's like, you can't tell anyone. My husband? No. I'm like, okay. Can't tell anyone. I'm like, all right. And so I come back over, and Miles sees me crying. He's like, what's up? And I'm like, nothing. I'm like, and he's like, you okay? And I'm like, it's good tears, I promise. It's happy tears. I'll tell you about it one day, I promise. But it was beautiful because I just finished this story with the pikas. And when Corrado asked, do you have any ideas? I mean, we're still in the pandemic. International travel is still like kind of off the table. Do you have any ideas? And I'm like, yes, let's do a piece that celebrates the high altitude wildlife. Let's celebrate Colorado's wildlife. These animals, like the pika, they're mighty and they're warriors. And Corrado, I don't think he knew what a pika was at that time. He's now obsessed. But they were like, they heard the passion in my voice, and they were like, okay, we'll do it. A lot of problems with this, and the main problem is the mountain wildlife, while I celebrate the animals for enduring it, it's a harsh environment for a camera campaign, right? The weather changes super quickly. You're at high altitudes, and there's not really time for the team to acclimatize. And I was like, you know, we're gonna make it work. We went all the way up to 14,000 feet in elevation for this campaign, and we had a number of shifting weather patterns. So it was really funny too, because, I'll let this play. I just did a time lapse to make it more dramatic when I talked about the mountains. I hope that was all right. Our first day getting out there, we went to Mount Blue Sky, and formerly known as Mount Evans, but now Mount Blue Sky. We went out and we parked, and there was hail and horrible weather, and you know, we're sitting in the car like all huddled together, and okay, we got to get out and take these pictures. And I just remember Corrado looking at me like, what have you gotten me into? And Megan, our wildlife biologist on the trip, turns to us and says, don't like the weather in Colorado, wait 10 minutes. This is Megan. She's a senior conservation biologist with Rocky Mountain Wild. She was also one of the heroes that does the Pika project. And having her on the team was one of the most integral things for me. Because whenever we photograph wildlife, especially doing a project like this, we want to make sure we don't harm any wildlife. So she stayed there, and she not only knew the behavior of locations, she also had all the maps for our permits, where we could stand, where we could shoot, where we couldn't. She was brilliant, and I highly, highly push you all to educate yourself on wildlife, educate yourself on the rules, and talk to biologists. They're so friendly. But we finally got out of the car, and we got to photograph the pika, right? My campaign was mostly video, but I did also have to give some photos. And so I'm really excited, though, because the weather cleared and we got out. Do you want to know what's more nerve-wracking than somebody looking at all of your raw files? Don't look at my raws, don't look at my raws, because it's like, crap, crap, crap. Okay, that one works. Crap, 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 crap. Like a lot of times when I'm on a trip, I'll take 5,000, 6,000 images, hoping for one for my portfolio. It is hard, and I shoot probably more crap than anyone in this room, I guarantee it, because I'm constantly playing and experimenting. But what's more nerve-wracking than having somebody look at your raw files? Having the head of the Nikon Ambassador team with a device hooked up to your camera watching your electronic viewfinder as you're taking every photo. Right? I'm like, oh, you're seeing my autofocus modes. Oh, you're seeing this. And not only that, this was for a camera I had no manual. I wasn't able to play with before. It was all confidential. And then it ends up in my hand, and it's like, here's the job of your dreams with gear you don't know. But it was really beautiful, because the Z9 jumped leaps and bounds. And the second I started using it, I started noticing that the autofocus was hitting the eye of the pika. I started noticing that the camera was so fast and accurate. And it was really beautiful, because really, really quickly, I built up that confidence, and I could just focus on the amazing Colorado wildlife. Like the whistle pig, the bighorn sheep, and I could see those crazy details. Now here's the thing. This was my first video campaign. This was my first big production, and I was scared, and I was in front of a person that has changed my life. I was in front of Nikon, who's given me so many gifts, and I wanted to do a really, really good job. This bighorn sheep has a big story because it was one of the things I really wanted. I wanted the shape to tie in this moon footage I got. I wanted that circular shape. I really wanted a bighorn, but we didn't see it for the first 5 days. And then we finished our shoot, top of Rocky Mountain National Park, and we start heading down. We had 2 vehicles. I was in the first vehicle. Mike Corrado was in the second. We started heading down, and I saw on the side the bighorns. I yelled, "Bighorns!" We stopped. We got out. We walked. The second car came and joined us. And it was funny, though, because everything was so confidential. I had to hide shooting all the time. Michael Dion was with me. He kept throwing jackets over my head and kept hiding me so nobody could see the camera. Nobody could see it. But we're taking this picture, me and Michael Corrado, and it was really funny because it was like that pinnacle. It was like, yes, we got that shot. We're high-fiving each other. We're super excited. It's what's going to tie things together. And then something kind of disastrous happened. I went back to the car a little earlier because I had to use the facilities. So I walked back to the car, went down to a toilet, came back up to pick up the people that stayed behind. The 2 that stayed behind, my husband and Michael Corrado. We pull up. My husband comes up to the car, jumps in. I say, "Mike, you want to get in here?" "No, I'll stay in my car," the second vehicle. The second vehicle sees that I slow down to pull off. The second vehicle doesn't go back for Michael Corrado. We start going down Rocky Mountain. We find a pull-off with a bathroom, get out, and I ask people, "Yeah, hey, where's Michael?" "Oh, he's probably in the toilet." We wait there. Wait. We had left the head of the Nikon Ambassador program at 11,000 feet at Rocky Mountain National Park. First ever camera campaign that I'm going to kill and impress everybody, and I leave the head of the program, the guy that changed my life. Yeah, if you ever see him, ask him about that story. He loves telling it, and he loves giving me the dirties when he tells it. Because it is scary at that high altitude, and it is scary, and I'm sorry. I will forever be sorry. And I'm really glad that Nikon gave me a second campaign because I am so indebted, and I will never leave the boss at the top of a mountain ever again. But here's my Z9 campaign. I'd love to share it with you all today. It's really beautiful because photography used to always take me far to take photos, but I'm starting to really embrace North American wildlife. I got another call end of last year, this one from the amazing people at B&H, asking me if they could shoot a series on my wildlife photography, from ethics to scouting to composition to the conservation aspect of it. I was like, yes! And they asked, where do you want to go? Maria and Matt were just phenomenal, and they were so excited to come out to Colorado, or come out to Yellowstone. We ended up going to Yellowstone. They told me they wanted me to shoot in January, and I'm like, oh, let's do Yellowstone. Really excited too, because if you're interested in that whole process from start to finish, from finding the right guides to everything, to packing my gear, to what lenses I have, I highly, highly recommend you checking it out. They were kind enough to let me share a little clip of the series.
You know those moments in nature that completely take your breath away? I live for those moments.
Look at it walking. Do you see the light hitting the snow as it's coming off? Absolutely beautiful.
We're gonna go through my whole process, from prepping to packing to research, how to approach wildlife ethically. We're gonna talk all the technical, but also all the creative. And then we're gonna move into the post-processing. Join me in B&H for this wildlife series, and welcome to Yellowstone National Park.
It can be found on their YouTube page, and to make things super, super simple for you all, I made a QR code. So if you're interested in finding that, take a photo of this and jump on and watch that wildlife series. And if you see Matt or Maria, give them a big thank you, because it was an amazing, amazing production that really let me be creative and show what I like shooting, not just the technically sharp and you know, the pictures that everybody wants, but I got to get creative and play around, and they pushed me to be an artist, which I thought was beautiful. We got an opportunity to talk about the bison and the importance of the bison in Yellowstone. And as much as this shoot was beautiful and everything, it was also hard, because Yellowstone in January had lots of areas without snow, which is not normal. With photography, it's important to step back and show the bigger picture. And I wanted a picture that showed the wolf and the environment, and the fact that the environment is missing the snowpack it needs. As a storyteller, that sort of narrative and that little bit of extra information can go so far. Educate people, let people know what's happening. The world has shown me so much beauty, so much compassion, so much emotion. It's brought me to tears more times than I can remember. I saw Lizzie's presentation yesterday, and she made a comment that she said she felt excitement for life through photography. And Lizzie, God, that just spoke to me. And that's what my camera does. It gives me this excitement for life, an appreciation, an understanding of beauty. And I hope you don't mind me using your phrase, because it is beautiful. But that's the thing, this world is full of so many emotional beings. It is full of things that make me want to celebrate life. It helps bridge that gap and helps me deeper understand, and it helps me want to fight passionately for it, even if I am fighting for a tadpole. From seeing the sublime in the mountains to seeing the sublime in the tiny, the camera has connected me and made my life more beautiful. It has given me fight. There are things to discover everywhere. There are heroes to celebrate that are helping these populations. And you know what? We've got cameras, and we can help tell their stories. I see a lot of people that go out and take photos of wildlife. But if you find somebody in your own local park or somebody in your community that goes out and counts birds or knows about a unique species, teaming up with them, asking them about it, joining them with the camera, letting them spread what they're passionate about, taking those photos, and taking those photos not just for you, but for them to continue telling their story and what they're passionate about. You will help protect your local spaces. You will help protect wildlife. As much as I try super hard, they're all baby steps, and maybe taking a photograph at a local park is a baby step, but it is huge, and it can protect that space. It can protect your local wildlife. For me, my ultimate goal forever was getting published, getting a National Geographic. This story has been turned down more times than I can count. This is a story I told at the Optic West webinar Watch it if you're interested. It's all on the importance of native bees. If you think I'm passionate about tadpoles, you should get me talking about bees. And you know what? My tadpole story made it all the way to the text test in Nat Geo and got denied. My bee story has not been published. But you know what? For me now, the end goal is not getting published. The end goal is to be able to share these stories, maybe get one of you guys to be passionate about a tadpole, passionate about a bee. The bee photos are being used by the biologists to teach all over the world and to connect people with what he's passionate about. And that, in a lot of ways, is more powerful than getting an image published. Publication is getting harder and harder, and it should not be the end goal anymore. The end goal should be celebrating people, celebrating life, because you know what? How freaking cool is it that we live in a world with pikas? I want to thank you all so much for listening to me talk and listening to what I'm passionate about. I love that you saw what I was passionate about. I would love to see what you're passionate about. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. All you have to do is click your camera on this QR code and share your images with me. Share your stories. I would love to see them because I am so grateful that we're in a community of people that spread passion. Love you all. Thank you for everything.